Good afternoon. First, I'd like to thank, he was just there a second ago, Attorney General John Suthers, there it's hiding behind me, my left hand, for helping us put this together and make sure that our legal I's and T's were dotted and crossed. A few minutes ago, I signed an executive order that makes an additional $65.5 million immediately available for disaster relief and recovery. $20 million will be available to local government for in a loan format. This brings the total amount of state funds available to $91.5 million. Of the $65.5 million we're dedicating today, $15.5 million is being shifted from the Controlled Maintenance Trust, and $50 million is from the Medical Services Premiums Appropriation of the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing of HCPF. And this is a flexible fund that, again, this money is being loaned, it will be repaid, but we realized we had to get really moving on this. The total cost of permanent repairs of the Colorado State highways now estimated at $475 million. Again, I emphasize that's an estimation, but there's also a great deal of work to be done on local county roads and municipal roads. It became apparent to us that we needed to take this action and make these additional funds, the $65.5 million, available. After we spoke yesterday we have a weekly conference call with all of our elected officials, and we heard from a number of them. I mean, it's clear that they have enough stress and anxiety in their lives, and that wherever possible we should not be adding to it. And they were very concerned about how soon FEMA would pay them back, where they were going to find the resources to begin hiring contractors in real time. And I think that we need to make sure that all reasonable financial resources should be marshaled as quickly and as efficiently as humanly possible to make sure that these communities can start the moment they're ready with their rebuilding efforts. And there's absolutely no reason or excuse that the state should be in any part a delay of that. There's been some question about whether we're going to call a special session of the legislature, and I think that depends on whether there's a need. We are certainly assessing our options and what are the perceived needs, both from local community elected officials, but also from the legislature as well. It may indeed prove that it to be necessary. Certainly there have been reports of looting, cautions of contractor fraud. These are some of the things the legislature may choose to consider. I do want to emphasize, and I was not able to get all the details, but if the previous disasters, such as the Waldo Canyon fire, are an example, looting will be treated very harshly. And I can't imagine I can imagine more despicable crimes, but it's hard to, when people have lost so much, to go into their empty homes and run off with their TV sets or other valuables. And I believe the penalties that judges administered after some of the looting that happened down in El Paso County was the maximum possible, and it was not in years, but was measured in decades. Certainly, the issues around a special session, a lot of it has to do with expense. Minimum, it's going to cost somewhere in the vicinity of $60,000 or $70,000, and probably well more than that to have a special session. So we want to make sure that we have a true need. A number of the issues that were raised, we've been able to deal with. Some of the hardest hit communities, their schools were about to have their census on October 1st. And Robert Hammonds and our Education Commission have provided flexibility, which is allowed in this kind of a disaster, so that they can have alternative days for when their census will count. So some of their children that are homeless and trying to find a place to stay, they might well not be in school by October 1st. We want to make sure when they get into school that they are counted. I want to also point out that FEMA has approved temporary rental assistance for at least 2 months. People can go to coloradohousingsearch.com and look for rental housing if they're still looking for it. At the same time, if people have housing they're trying to rent. They should also make sure that it is available and published on coloradohousingsearch.com. I talked today to the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Sean Donovan, in Washington. They are moving as fast as they can. I think they're going to set new records for us, but making sure as they get the assessments of how much housing has been lost, what the anticipated needs are going to be, that they can address those. And they're not going to, I mean, we're already going forward with the housing plan and beginning to build the relationships with HUD so that our Office of Housing can make real gains in real time. Jerry Stead, our Chief Recovery Officer from IHS, has been spectacular and has been meeting with the National Guard, the Colorado Department of Transportation, our budget officials, making sure that he gets the complete lay of the land and is able to begin marshaling different resources. They have some sources in Washington, so we're saying very closely connected with some of the sources of this funding for the recovery. And again, I can't possibly express our appreciation to IHS sufficiently or frequently enough. So I think that's the main part of today. We wanted to make sure that we let local communities know that we were taking that last $15.5 million from the Controlled Maintenance Fund, but enhancing that with $50 million that we will advance to the Office of Emergency Management and will be available for immediate deployment into the local communities. Questions? Yeah.
Governor, regarding the possibility of a special session, can you talk about what sorts of factors you're looking at to make your decision on if there's a contract or when you make a decision since the regular session is a few months away?
Right. Well, certainly we've been looking at this for about a week and trying to, I mean, each time an issue arises, we're saying, all right, do we need a special session or can we deal with that? And so far, most of the issues we've been able to deal with directly. That doesn't mean we've covered every avenue, so we're continuing to reach out, but it's a matter of days that we'd have to make that decision. Anything else?
You mentioned the displaced victims who are receiving FEMA aid for their current housing situation. What happens to them after that 2-month period has expired and they're still not able to find housing and they're not able to get back to the homes that are destroyed?
Well, again, that allocation is the immediate allocation. I think that there will be other support available if at that time they still haven't found permanent housing or unable to afford temporary housing.
Is that a solution you're looking for within your own confines with the state, or would there be additional federal help?
It's too early to say. We know that, I mean, our economy is coming back very rapidly. We had a shortage, especially all across the affected areas, of rental housing. So that's an issue that has been raised, and we don't have enough information to say in 2 months where we're going to be. But we're certainly going to move heaven and earth to make sure that the people aren't left out in the cold as winter's coming. Obviously, if you go for 2 months from now, you're just almost December 1st. I should also have pointed that pretty much every road you see here, when the Department of Transportation made that estimation of $475 million, we've gotten over half the roads open already, and we believe at least a lot of these will be temporary repairs, but we're going to be able to connect a lot of these communities by December 1st to make that deadline. Even we were very worried about making sure that road from Lyons to Estes Park, whether we'd be able to get to that. But I think we're going to have a good shot at that. Also, I forgot to mention there's been a lot of concerns about pollution into the Platte River during the height of the flood. Obviously, we were having immense amounts of water, and we did have a couple of major sources of pollution. We estimate somewhere close to 40,000 gallons of either condensate or crude oil was released in that period of time. Again, in the volume of water that we had in the flood, 40,000 gallons is actually quite small. It doesn't seem like it, but at any one time, it's probably less than a fraction, less than 1/10% of the flow that was going through at that moment. Of more concern, I think, we had 20 million gallons of raw sewage that was released during this flood, and we think close to roughly 200 million gallons of partially treated sewage. In both of these cases, even 1 gallon is too much. So we are, obviously, as we begin the recovery process, we're going to look at how do we get at least the treatment part. We'll still have to have a pump down by the river, but the treatment part of a wastewater system, maybe we try and find ways where we can put that in higher ground in those places where it's destroyed and being rebuilt. Same thing with oil and gas, wherever possible. If they've got collection facilities, let's see if it's possible to move it to higher ground. Well, that's at this point. I mean, the issues we were concerned about was that the census date for the public schools. We have heard one school district in northern Colorado that had 800 students, and their estimation was 250 of their students still hadn't settled, had found a place to live. So if they don't have a place to live, they're not going to be in school October 1st. But we anticipate they will find a place. They'd be in school on October 15th. And the school wouldn't get any credit. They wouldn't have the resources to teach all these kids coming back in that were not there on the census day. So, Robert Hammond and his team were able to work that out and provide flexibility, alternative dates where they can get their census done. Other issues, looting, or so there's been some concern about contractor fraud, using this, dire circumstance to double or triple what you're charging customers to get their house cleaned up or rebuilt. I mean, there are obviously got to be limits to that. But again, the question is, we've got to go through and look at what all the existing laws are, make sure that we don't already have existing laws, and make sure that there's not just a question of enforcing what we already have. Yeah. Well, so that's what we're examining the existing legal framework now, and to see whether that's something that could be and should be addressed. I am always cautious about leaping into action when you might create unintended consequences that are worse than the problem you're trying to solve. But stories like that, all of us, our hearts twist. Our gut clenches when we hear that kind of stuff. Here's a family going through this worst time of their lives, and then someone's going to try and make a few extra bucks off them, a lot of extra bucks. Obviously, we talked to Secretary Donovan and his team of how can we we need more housing, right? I mean, this is a crucial issue, and we have a couple of kind of prefabricated plants that manufacture prefabricated housing, so double wide trailers, those kinds of things, but can manufacture them to HUD standards. We want to see how fast we can get those up and rolling, and begin creating some of that housing that will relieve some of the pressure on upward prices. Okay. Anything else? Did I miss anything? Good enough? Again, thanks to this whole team. All these folks deserve, I don't think anybody's had less than a 12 or 14 or 16-hour day for the last several weeks, and they've done heroic efforts. We're very grateful. I realize you have too. Thank you.